Cory Booker would like to say that this has been a very positive podcast. It's great to talk about some of the positive stories happening in the city of Newark, New Jersey. You know, I met a young man at a podcast on 550 Broad Street. You know, he's a great guy.
Hey guys, Matt McQueenie of the Mix Minus podcast. I did a little bit of a simulcast here. The guest today is Justin Williams. He's a local comic here in the Newark, New Jersey area, and he's also an history professor at a college in New York City. He's got a PhD in history, and he was going to come on a podcast that I produce for my company, and it's about Newark. It's called Newark that's the podcast name. And today I had to host it because the typical host was feeling under the weather. And because of that, I found the guest very interesting. And so I said, hey, I'll put it on my own feed. Justin Williams has performed at comedy festivals across the United States and Canada. He's a native of Kansas City, Missouri, but lives in Newark and has made the city an integral part of his comedy routine. Justin is also a college history professor by day. Justin, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's really good to be here.
So, Justin, what brought you to Newark, and how long have you lived here now?
So I originally moved to the East Coast to go to grad school out at Stony Brook. That's out in Suffolk County, Long Island. So I lived there for a year. Then I commuted for the rest of graduate school from Queens and Brooklyn. And I knew I wanted to stay in the area, so I was looking for a place that had good public transportation, was like affordable, was actually urban rather than suburban, and like was like diverse and things like that. So if you like check all those things on a list, it's like Newark like is all of those things.
It's sneaky good. It's funny when you said good public, and I'm like schools. It's my head, but no transportation.
Oh, I didn't have kids yet. Yeah. No, I don't have kids yet even now. But even when I think of like, you know, I'll probably send my kids to like Science Park. I've already made friends. I already know where I'm probably gonna send my kids. They're going to like North Star and like Science Park probably, like, or maybe Newark Arts, depending on what they want to do, you know.
Well, funny enough and morbid enough, you say you're probably going to die here. Is that you like this place that much, huh?
Yeah. Well, I already spent all my money on the property, so I actually can't go anywhere else. I don't have enough money. No. I like this city, and it's like it'd be a weird time. It's the city's sort of in this dynamic moment where it'd just be weird to move.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, now you move.
Yeah.
It's
you'd be like the folks who left
now
before.
I'm out of here. Yeah, it's all this investment comes into the city.
Absolutely.
Oh, now I gotta leave Newark. It's getting too bad now, you know.
Did you come here? You came from the Midwest.
Yeah.
I'm sure most of the country knows what Newark is, and a lot of your background in your studies lead you to probably a lot of what Newark is. But what were your preconceived notions coming this way?
Well, ironically enough, I didn't have any. And it's funny. New Jersey has a very different, and if you're from New Jersey, and then I think only Connecticut are two states that have like really interesting relationships with their urban centers, to where there's like there's sort of a level of neglect that I've never seen before. Like, and I say that because even from the Midwest, all of our cities have Newark's problems, but we don't have Newark's isolation. Right? Like, in the same way, nobody in Illinois says, where should I move in Illinois? Like, nobody goes, you need to go to Springfield. Don't even go anywhere in the city of Chicago.
Right.
Or even like St. Louis is sometimes the most dangerous city in America, but it still has like, I mean, quite frankly, like several white neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That's completely different than Newark. So that was the irony. My family was like, you know, coming from Kansas City, it has this all-American reputation, and people are like, Newark, be careful. And I'm like, Kansas City has a way higher homicide rate. I'm actually safer in Newark.
Well, it's interesting, too, because Newark is probably more akin, sort of what you're saying, to cities around the country where people do live in the suburbs almost because you can afford to more there, and there's not much of a push downtown. You're seeing a lot of downtown pushes now, but I remember walking through St. Louis maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, it dies if there's not a Cardinals game or another thing going on.
Oh, no.
You're just walking, and it's got a lot of the same blues stuff and it's very similar.
It's very similar. Yeah. St. Louis has deindustrialization. It has all of those things. Yeah. And I mean, especially the downtown is more of a recent sort of reinvestment sort of project and things like that. Yeah. And I think that's also the thing too, coming from places where, things got put downtown. Kansas City was actually sort of like this like post-industrial ghost town, and then the first thing they did was they put an arena downtown, and people were like, no way, no one's ever going to go to the Sprint Center and all those things. And the Sprint Center actually doesn't have a professional anchor tenant, and it's like one of the most successful arenas in the world, And now you go to downtown, you can't even touch it. There's like when a Midwestern city has made it when like guys from the countryside in cowboy hats are like hanging out there like at like 3 a.m.
That's
like
true.
We've really made it now,
So you said you've actually been in Newark since, is it about 12 years?
No, like 6 years.
6 years.
I've been in the New York City area like 13 years now, something like that.
And so even over the 6 years, that's actually been a really good snapshot of the development happening. It's a big part of your comedy routine, actually, where it's like the next day, something's on fire, and then the next day it's like a $6,000 rental place. But what's it been like seeing this progression, living in it?
Yeah, I mean, so I went deeper than, I live in Lower Broadway, which is off downtown, which is, I think is like, Newark's progress is like, downtown, it's like sort of like night and day in a lot of places, right? And then it becomes like uneven in the neighborhoods. But if like 6 years ago, like there was like, there's like now there's like Whole Foods and like Barcade.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
That's like a night and day difference.
Yeah.
I'm a little sad that the porn theater is gone now. That was a real asset to the community.
It really was.
Yeah,
that had a lot of history there.
A lot of history there. We have to work to. They always talk about anti-gentrification. We need to protect our porn institutions.
Well, I think they were owned by the same people who had the Broad Street Cafe as well.
Yeah.
Now it's Bulgogi or whatever.
Yeah, there's an amazing amount of like sort of commercial interest in the city. And then also too, just basic things like Military Park and now Mulberry Commons, things like that are like, that's like, if you would have seen a before and after shot, that's like shocking. And like in Washington Park is like even sort of starting to get attention now.
Yeah. But it was always like, all right, we're going to come in, we're going to go to the Ironbound, and then we're going to get the hell out really quick. Or working downtown, it's like, I guess we could go to Kilkenny's, and it's still great, nothing against Kilkenny's.
Yeah. And
then all of a sudden, it's like 27 Mix comes in, and then all of a sudden, that Prudential building goes up, and Halsey is, you feel like you're in one of those future rendering pictures.
Yeah.
And it's like the future people walking through a redeveloped Halsey Street, and you're like, what's going on here?
Yeah, and you'll see especially when all the apartment buildings open, there's like, aren't there apartments above the new McGoverns and things like that? You get a sense of that, like Halsey Street. I would say one difference that's like sort of this interesting thing is that like the cool small shops that were open on Halsey when I first moved here have now been sort of replaced by corporate shops.
Yeah,
which is like actually been an interesting change. You remember like St. James and Company, like the hip black guy gentleman store?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like $40 candles and like $200 ties and but it was like a small business like in a brownstone. Those I'd say are now starting to it's like what's the name of the Qdoba? Is there
Qdoba's
now?
there? Yeah, the halal guys are there. And you're like, well, Newark would have had like an original halal, but this is actually a chain of halal guys.
But I'll say those I'm grateful for like those things because at least they're open on weekends and open past. There's a lot of people that don't they just go 5 o'clock. We're done.
We're over. Commuter crowd. I always thought the weirdest thing, because working here, you get really attached to certain lunch places, and Jimmy John's it's a chain, but man, Jimmy John's was like your joke. It was up and out in like no time, and all of a sudden you went, what? There's newspapers on the windows?
It's hard, so Jimmy John's brand, because I'm from the Midwest, that's a college town brand, and so, and you're starting to see more students, like more housing's being built for the students, but there's still like, our students still have a commuter culture, right? Yeah. So, Jimmy John's, and then like, I don't know where you're from originally, you ever heard of like Gumby's Pizza and stuff like that?
No, I haven't heard of Gumby's Pizza.
Like all things that only exist in college, like it's all food for drunk college students.
Wow.
But if they're not living here in a big enough numbers, I can see how Jimmy John's might have had a rough go of it.
Yeah, it was funny. It worked though. I was like, man,
I liked Jimmy. I was happy. I was like, oh, a piece of home out here. But I was a drunk college student when I was eating Jimmy John's like every other day.
So when you're home, I think people would be interested in someone who's actually just put their roots down in the city from outside. When you're home, what is like a typical Sunday? Let's do the New York Times Sunday routine. So you're going to shave your avocado into the but what's a Sunday like for you?
I'm usually tired from either going out socially because there's a lot of events in this city like that I like to be like I try to hang out with like the Newark sort of arts community. Like I have a lot of like friends here that have established, and then there's just like the fun thing about Newark is that so much of its nightlife does a terrible job of advertising itself, so it becomes sort of like an explorer experience. You're like, I see that this place has no website and no Yelp reviews, but somehow 40,000 Google reviews. Yeah. So I'll see what's happening, and it's like literally like 10,000 people.
This restaurant turns into a nightlife at midnight. It's like Cinderella.
Yeah, and there's like one of my favorite places is like Marvea Lounge up in the North Ward. It's like every Saturday night around 1 a.m. It's like it becomes like a laser light robot bachata show. Which I find incredible. So yeah, there's a lot of that, or if I'm out in the city, or if I'm doing shows and things like that. So a lot of Sundays I'm sort of in the house. Maybe I'll go to brunch. Like I'll go.
Where do you go for brunch?
I'll go downtown to either Marcus, or I'll go. I live on pretty much on Bloomfield Avenue, so I'll go to like Raymond's in Montclair or something.
Oh, nice.
I might go to
is
church.
Good though. Oh wow, church like a brunch or church.
Both. Okay. Brunch is really church is the excuse to go to brunch.
Okay.
It's like, all right, well, church is next door, especially Montclair. It's like it's just all brunch and church right next to each other.
Little wine right into the.
Yeah.
So you do a really funny bit about the New Jersey Devils.
Yes.
It sounds like you've gone to games and you've kind of become a fan.
I'm a fan. And I think so. As fortune would have it, the New Jersey Devils were originally the Kansas City Scouts. Oh, so I'm still a Kansas City sports fan, but I didn't have a hockey team. And then that way, I figured that was the Lord telling me that this was the right place for me.
Wow.
And so every once in a while when I go to games, actually, I'll see Devils fans wearing Kansas City Scouts jerseys as like a throwback thing.
And there were Colorado in between, right?
Yeah. No, but you can't not like live hockey. I encourage you, if you're not a fan of the NHL, just go live.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an incredible sport. It's incredibly fast paced. And when I first moved here, it's been kind of on and off, but the Devils have been really bad, which means I got great tickets for like my first hockey games, which is the best way to experience it.
And you missed like the run where they were basically the San Antonio Spurs of the NHL.
Yeah, I missed all the 3 Stanley Cups. Oh, I think was I here? I think maybe
probably
the first year
one.
I was here. Yeah, the one where they went and lost. Yeah,
they got the Kings, I think.
And it also helped with they had hockey players like the great ones have a great longevity. So I was, even if I wasn't a fan of the game, I remember when I first got here, we had Jaromir Jagr and Martin Brodeur.
Yeah, and they were like 44, both of them. But Jaromir Jagr's still playing, I think.
Yeah, I'm like, I have these guys Sports Illustrated for Kids cards, so I can be a fan of this team, you know what I mean?
So like a big part of your kind of bit with that is the demographics of hockey against the demographics of Newark and having a team here and why you would do such a thing. They, interestingly enough, this offseason traded for a black player, PK Subban.
I saw that, yeah.
Now, I keep wondering, so I want to call him African American, but he's Canadian. Is it like the Americas American? Like, what is the ethnicity for that?
I guess he'd just be a black guy. Because he wouldn't be an African American per se. Because I think his family is Canadian, but maybe like Nigerian immigrants or something like that. Yeah. So
it gets into weird like cross ethnicities, like because and I see him referred to that way because it's just kind of. What is said, but
no, and it's the same thing. Even when we had Devontae Smith-Pelly, right? It's like he's black Canadian.
Yeah, and
he's
it's
not
like
African American.
African Canadians now sounds weird. Like African American's weird when you think about it, but like actually African Canadian makes you think about it more and go, wait a second, that's a strange little thing there. On the comedy front, what's the biggest comedy crowd that you've ever performed before?
I've done a couple of theaters. So the theater in like Asheville, North Carolina. Did I think it's the Diana Wortham Theater in Bloomington, Indiana. So those hold like 600, 700 people.
Wow!
So those are the biggest crowds.
So you're able to do pretty good little tours. It's almost like you're a band, right?
Sort of. Yeah. I mean, I was really hitting the road hard a lot there for a while, but then it becomes like so comedy is like this weird changing landscape, and especially if in the cities, like the rent's going up everywhere. Mm-hmm. So like you make really good contacts with the place, and then it just closes.
Oh, good point.
So there's a lot.
It's all Brooklyn now, right? Or you move. It's like sort of the same thing with I grew up in punk music, and it's funny you moved here. For other reasons, but the comedy scene is pretty nice here. This area was the Nashville of pop punk music in the early 2000s, so everyone's moving here. Yeah. But then there's nowhere to play anymore because people get the money gets too big for the venues where the city had a lot of them, and then the crowds piss off all of the Knights of Columbuses that allow you to have the concerts there, and so you're left with a couple of people's garages or basements, and then that loses it. There's nowhere to play anymore. So that must sort of be a similar thing with comedy, and it's probably why a lot of colleges come into play.
Colleges, yeah. I mean, Rutgers Newark has been really had been really good to me in the last few years and things like that. I'm trying to think what other colleges have I performed at. I performed at a couple of other ones. Colleges are pretty fun, except for I'm 35 now, and I have nothing in common with students.
That's
and then
true.
it's also kind of like it's kind of fun though, because it's like as a professor, it's like I get to go talk crazy at someone else's job. It's like I get to say everything I can't say at my job.
It's interesting.
At someone else's university.
Yeah,
so that's kind of fun.
What's more important, you rate my professor or comedy review?
Neither is important to me. It's all angry people. No one's gonna go on the internet and write something nice.
Well, Matt here said he was looking, and you got 100%. I would take your class again review, so that's got to be nice.
Oh, there is a Justin Williams at City College that's an English professor. I don't
really?
think. Yeah, I check every once in a while just to see. I mean, like my so we get evaluations, and those are good. But I remember one of the first ones when I was in graduate school was like, this guy's a dumb idiot. He should never teach a class ever, and he should go to jail. And people write all this other crazy stuff. I've had people like write things about a B-.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that happens a lot.
Just like scathing reviews.
Well, a lot of them lose their. Oh, it's undergraduate, right?
Yeah, undergraduate. I have some MA students now. Yeah,
because a lot of the tuition reimbursements, they won't cover you if you get below a B. They start to cut it off. So maybe that's it. Now, does your day job and the education of attaining a PhD, which is kind of cool, I should be calling you doctor.
No, don't call me that. I don't cure anything.
Does that make you a better comedian? Does it make the process of creating comedy any easier for you?
Sort of. I mean, they're both. I mean, comedy and teaching are sort of the same thing. You're trying to keep someone's attention and be able to tell a story, right? And then sort of convey a message, right? So in those things, they're sort of the same. Although some things in history aren't funny, but I think. One thing is now I just got tenure, and I had never really talked about my work life on stage, but I could probably now do an hour about being a teacher.
That's interesting.
So in that way, it's great. I now have an hour of teacher material.
Wow. So what is, I imagine the process of coming up with your bits and writing, you probably spend a certain amount of time every day doing it, right?
Oh, I don't write in the traditional sense. I just kind of walk around and let stuff happen, and then I think about it. I'm like, well, if I were gonna tell somebody about what I just saw, how would I say it?
So do you record it into something, or how do you maintain the? Just keep it in your head.
Yeah.
I guess if you're doing PhD work, you can remember a lot of stuff.
No. Well, it's funny. That's what the opposite. Anything like with history has to be like exhaustively documented. It has to be like written down, and like and like I have to take pictures of the thing. But no, comedy is just like, it's always just like clicking like, what was funny about that, and I think about it. I will every once in a while. I'll write a word. I'll write just a simple phrase that describes what I saw into my phone. That's like the most right, like. Be like man with or like one night I was in downtown Newark, and it's not just the Devils games. It's like downtown Newark just takes on especially Broader Market takes on the character of whatever's at the Prudential Center, which is hilarious sometimes. So one night it was all cougars downtown. I go, where are these like cougars like coming from? It's just like all women in like leather chaps and stuff, and it's like Rod Stewart was in town.
Oh boy,
you have to like look up what's there, or like my favorite is also K-pop. When like Broader Market just becomes Little Korea. Yeah, it's like 2-3 times a year. Yeah,
that's brought in some good restaurants around there too. Nice.
Yeah. I like Reds has been great, right? They're always open and things like that. Yeah, and they, I always like the staff there. Always have a good time. A lot of Newark's charter school teachers love to get drunk at Reds. So
that's funny.
Big shout out to all the charter school teachers that are obliterated at Reds Beer Garden on a Friday.
That's funny when you bring up that the Devils started in Kansas City. You know why Reds is here, right? Because it was the bar everyone went to when they played in the Meadowlands. You would walk through this little hidden part where they broke the fence, and you would walk right into Reds before and after games. That's where everyone would go. So they said, well, let's move with the Devils, and we'll put something in downtown Newark. That's
absolutely, and that's great. And it actually makes sense. I mean, God bless the Meadowlands, but it's just like, it's so weird to put all those people. I was at WrestleMania when the New Jersey Transit messed that up. You know how weird it is to be just trapped in a parking lot and not able to leave?
In suburban, like, nothingness.
Yeah, it's like it's not even like I don't even know if it's even a suburb at that point when you're in the Meadowlands. It's just like you're just in a in a concrete field and you can't leave. You know?
Yeah. No. Now, I imagine you appreciate kind of the balance of having all these things you do, teaching, having your background in education, and then comedy. They probably help each side of the coin there.
I feel, I mean, it's a good balance. It's like I'm able to get out my frustrations and things like that. And, you know, I wouldn't trade people. Sometimes people ask me, what is your ultimate goal, right? Or they'll be like, if you made $1 million doing comedy, would you stop teaching? I'm like, I don't think so, but I don't know. That's hypothetical. I'll let someone offer me $1 million and then we'll see. That's my plan.
What was your first comedy show? When was it?
Oh God, it was probably like 2007 or 2008.
Oh, wow.
I started at the comic strip. Oh no, actually my first comic show, it almost doesn't count. Like I went up at like an open mic in college. I did really bad material. It's like,
were you always the funny guy?
I had to be a class clown, but for not good reasons. I got moved around a lot when I was little, and that was the easiest way to make friends.
That's funny. And so when you reach the point, you probably, I mean, because a lot of us think about, oh, man, it would be cool to be a comedian, but it takes a lot of guts, liquor, something to get up there that first time, and then to go back the second time is even harder.
Both. Liquor always helps, but no, it's so funny. Sometimes I get very nervous depending on the gig, especially if it's a gig where I need to be sort of appropriate. Like, so I did an event at the Prudential Center for M&M's for Red Nose Day, and it's like, you know, it's a, you know, charity for like hunger and things like that, and then like there's a, you know, like Donald Payne, like your congressman, is in the audience, you know, and it's like this is actually a high stress gig, and like and then also I'm like bringing up like children from like Covenant House to like, you know, sort of perform on stage for the first time, and it's like I get like a stomach ache actually when I get off stage after things like that, like a very intense stomach ache.
Really?
Yeah. But most of the time, a comedy club's great, though. Like, there is no pressure there. You can do pretty much anything you want in a comedy club, and it's fine.
Now, is there anything that's tough about performing at night and having to peak at night? Do you have to, like, change your schedule a little bit, or?
No, I stay up all night normally.
Oh, really?
And I actually teach night classes, so it actually really works out.
That's interesting.
The bigger problem for me is trying to wake up early in the morning.
Was this early, 2 o'clock, or late?
No, this is perfect.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Now, you're from Kansas City.
Yeah.
Got to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
A couple questions. So, one thing I want to know is there anybody who's famous who comes from the Kansas side? Because it's always Kansas City, Missouri, but it's like right on the border of Kansas. It's like how we have West New York, New Jersey. Right?
Sure, yeah, there's some famous Kansas City, Kansas. Janelle Monáe, I think, is from Kansas City, Kansas. Yeah, there's a few people. Jody Watley, I think, was from Kansas City, Kansas.
Okay. Seems to be a Midwest thing, right? Like where you split states with cities. Doesn't say East St. Louis. It's like,
yes.
Kind of a feel with that. What?
It's the same thing. Yeah, that's why I try to describe to students, right? It's like, although there is one key difference. Well, no. So there's parts of New York and New Jersey that touch each other just further north. Mm-hmm. The thing is that Kansas City, Kansas and Kansas City, Missouri proper, they're separated by a river, but there are also like long stretches where you can put a foot in each state. So it's like even some people that claim Kansas City, Missouri, like I'm trying to think. Some of the guys that like baseball, like Jason Sudeikis, they're actually they're actually from the Kansas suburbs.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, you bring it up. There's a lot of kind of that comedy group coming from there, because isn't Paul Rudd?
He's from the Kansas side too. Yeah,
he's from the Kansas side, and then John Hamm is from Missouri, isn't he?
Yeah, but I can't remember what part he's from. I think I don't want to. I think he might be from. No, he's not from Springfield or something like that. That's like where like Brad Pitt and like I think like Sheryl Crow. They're from like Springfield. Yeah.
It's funny how those little clusters can happen sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we're centrally located. That's what I liked about growing up in a place like that. So we take on the art and entertainment. Everybody, like I grew up listening to like East Coast hip hop, but I also grew up listening to like Southern hip hop because like the South is actually not that far from there. But then it was also like Chicago is also not far from there, and then St. Louis had its own thing that was going on, you know. And then even like then you go like west, and there's like West Coast stuff. So that's what I liked about being there. Kansas City's sort of like in the direct center of the country, so it takes on all of these qualities from everywhere.
So you're always wearing Kansas City sports hats, it seems like, on all the comedy shows. Have you Have you had a second thought about moving back? Because you got like a guaranteed 15-year run with Patrick Mahomes here.
Well, it's funny. My brother used to work for the Chiefs until this last season, and I actually, in the guarantee that we have Patrick Mahomes, but it wasn't the guarantee that my brother was going to be at the organization. But I actually declined to go to the AFC Championship game because I was so sure that we were going to win, because I was like, I can only go to either the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship. And if I would have went to the AFC Championship, I would have been able to have rode back with the team on the team plane.
Wow.
But now my brother's not with the organization anymore, so now I just have to pay for my own ticket again.
That would have been a moment. That's got to be. Have you ever been in that stadium in the middle of winter, like when it's just that brutal? It's like
Arrowhead.
Yeah,
that's literally every time I'm there.
It's like the coldest place in the world, isn't it?
I'm usually there
like Green Bay.
We usually have like a Christmas Eve game, and it's against like the Denver Broncos, and that's usually the game I'm at. Yeah, it's like a night game, but there's nothing. I mean, Arrowhead Stadium is a unique. I mean, it's like us in Seattle are the loudest stadiums in sports.
Yeah.
So like a third down in Kansas City is like an amazing experience. You're on defense. You know.
It's been a pretty good run there. I'll never forget that Kansas City team being a Mets fan. That was brutal. Did you go to any of those games over here?
I go to Royals, Yankees, and then if there's interleague play, I'll go to Royals, Mets every year. No, I mean the Royals and the Mets actually they have a lot in common because we're like the two in-state franchises that only have like the two titles compared to the crosstown. It's like
sort of the little brother.
Yeah, the Cardinals have like 17 World Championships or something like that.
Yeah.
They have a ton of them, right? And so like they're in the way that the Yankees are this permanently established brand. So I kind of felt for Mets fans because I actually like Mets fans. If I were to adopt an East Coast team, it'd probably be like the Mets.
Sort of similar colors in a way.
Similar colors, and then even our championships are kind of around the same time, right? Like 85 and then 86.
That's a good point. Yeah. We had to play each other. So you're 12 years into your kind of running comedy career. What do you what do you see happening with that? You're tenured now in teaching. You're going to continue obviously doing that. Do you kind of see it at the level it's doing what it needs to do for you? Do you see any kind of future where you're changing subject material, or do you just kind of go with the flow? Maybe talk more about school, right? You were saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get to talk more about my personal life. I got married, so that's a whole gateway of material.
You got to have kids then. Well, that'll be real good.
Yeah, I'm going to transition out of that and then figure out a unique hook on it in a way. So I think talking about some of the changes that have happened in my life, because now show business is very weird. I'm 35 now, so I'm not going to get the hot 22-year-old push from the business. Like, so I've got to now, but I'm like kind of not. I'm not 40 yet. Once I get 40, then so I'm kind of like transitioning into that stage of comic,
But in this marketing environment, I mean, it's easier and easier to find the niche, right? And to find audiences, I think. I mean, it's always hard to find audiences, but there's more of a chance that maybe you're not traditionally out of it, like a comic might have been 25 years ago when the machine was pushing everything along. Like, it seems like you can start things up a little more now, and that maybe there's audiences you can find a little easier. Yeah,
developing a brand, I'd say. I mean, when I started talking about Newark in my act, it's funny that like had like a very very high level of engagement with people. It's like people really started like responding to that, right? So yeah, I got to think of I guess like things like that. It's like when I produced content that was really targeted. So I did a comedy album that was just about New Jersey because I had to learn this state. Because the irony is like you get your act in New York, but like New Jersey is where you make money.
Yeah,
and New Jersey is like hilarious because it's all it's like a ton of towns that all are completely different from each other. And so you have to like really learn the state in order to be effective, because it's like you don't just go up there and talk about the subway. That's not very helpful in like Ocean County.
So did you have to go around the state sort of doing that, or did you do it naturally? Did you actually do real research on things?
Well, my research is that there's a ton of stuff to do here, and the fact that it's like I moved to the New Jersey to me is interesting in the way that I tell people this: New Jersey is the New York City that I thought I was moving to. Like there's still like ethnic enclaves here that have sort of been like untouched, right? Like it's like the authentic place that's been open for like 60, 70 years. That's like actually New Jersey. There's like all of that is like disappearing really fast in New York, if it's even around, right? So I like going to all those places. Like what I'll usually do is if I'm booked for a show, I'll go and hang out in the town for like 5 hours before I go on stage to get a sense of what it is. And then it's also the gigs in New Jersey can be really specific. They're like, we have the Korean American Firefighters Association of Fort Lee gig tonight, $500. And, you know, it's like that. It's always the convergence of ethnic and professional association or Elks Lodge. Like a lot of Elks Lodges.
Yeah, well, that's like that punk rock thing I was saying, where they're just repurposing them in the new kind of the new format.
Yeah. Some weird church shows. I've done like a couple of churches in like Roselle Park.
Oh, that's
funny. No, I should not be booked on church shows, but God bless. But I'm not doing any more of those.
Well, it's funny. The last thing I would kind of say from your act is I think the frame of reference, and this is probably why it resonates with people, the frame of reference you're giving to Newark is sort of refreshing. It's not just, I mean, even when people talk about Newark and the wards, like I know ward is the word that's used, but ward is like, it just sounds like not a great, it sounds like prison a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're bringing like a refreshing take, and you're bringing to life sort of the interesting things that are happening in the city, just like they're happening everywhere. It's just that people have a preconceived notion that they don't get past.
Yeah,
you know?
you have like that's just like the way stigma works, and then it's also, you know, if you once you establish like a construct, then anything that happens can sort of support that construct. So it's really hard for people to break out of that, right?
Yeah.
So the thing becomes Newark is dangerous, right? Even though like right now, what is crime at like a 50-year low, like statistically?
And it's got a lot of good stuff going on.
Yeah, but anytime like one thing happens, then that becomes proof to them that. My favorite is that where people are from places that are more dangerous than Newark, like talk trash about Newark.
Yeah. Well, you were saying Brooklyn, right?
This is a true story. There were some guys one night I was walking around like Ferry Street or something. I was trying to get in the Tops Diner, but it closed at like 2 a.m. And there's this group kids, and they're from Soundview in the Bronx, and they're like looking for another diner. I go, hey, I'll go down to Andros Diner. That's where we're going. It's down in Ferry Street, you know, and it's fine. It'll be open till like 3. And they go, Newark, that's the hood.
Yeah, it's like you're in East Newark right now.
No, but they were also from Soundview.
Yeah, I know.
To me, it's the cognitive dissonance that people have is really funny. But in that way, I hope that some of that kind of remains. I know this is going to sound kind of messed up, but we need like a little bit of that because when your place loses all of its reputation, then it becomes an urban theme park.
Yeah.
I want Newark to gentrify, but I don't want it to downtown Hoboken gentrify.
Yeah, or Jersey City, or like Brooklyn, right?
Like Saturday night where it becomes like just couples breaking up in the street.
That's true. Couples breaking up in the street,
just crying, guys assaulting police officers because they're wasted out of their minds,
drinking rosés.
Yeah. You know, it's like we don't want SantaCon in Newark, right?
That's true. Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, it's almost like having the band, and you're like, oh, but I really like that original demo. I know they became enormous, but that original demo just had a certain mystique to it.
Yeah, Newark has to just keep a little bit of street credibility, but it doesn't need like total stigma. This whole like don't, and I think even that stigma has sort of changed a lot too. I think what we're seeing now is like the idea now is the stigma went from like don't be in Newark at all to where it's like be downtown in this part of downtown and this part of the East Ward and then Branch Brook Park a little bit. So it's kind of like expanding.
Yeah,
like a lot.
Yeah, they're moving it open. I mean, you were on as the final thing, I would say you were on they do something at Kilkenny's with comedy, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I've had a show there for the last just over 5 years.
Wow.
It's called the Brick City Comedy Review, the first Friday of every month at 8:00. Plug.
And they do like a TV show, right, or a YouTube show?
Every once in a while, we'll put like clips of things online to promote the show, and then we I made like a short film called Newark the Comedy, and we just filmed a lot of stuff at Kilkenny, and
that was cool.
Kilkenny's great. It's like this amazing space, you know, right at sort of like Central and Halsey downtown, right? And it's a really good place, good beer selection and things like that.
You guys take over the second floor?
Yeah, we take the second floor. Yeah. Rob has this giant space that he lets us use.
Yeah, we do our Christmas party there sometimes.
Oh,
we do karaoke on on that same sound system.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. Like, and it's a really great space. It's only corporate events and then firefighter events.
That's right.
The only times we ever get kicked out of there.
Absolutely. So you said you're staying. You're redoing a house here, and
I am. I was actually cleaning the attic this morning because I'm thinking about trying to maybe build a roof deck. I don't know. I have to have a structural engineer look at this.
I don't know. That sounds like the couple's breaking up in the streets kind of thing. A roof deck.
No, it's actually to blast out my neighbors because they've been blasting me out with bachata for the last 5 years, and I have to now get higher ground to retaliate against them.
Have you found anything really cool in the house as you've been redoing it?
I did actually. I ripped all the layers of carpet that were in there. When I ripped those out, the layers of carpet and layers of laminate.
Yeah.
When I ripped those out and got another 9 inches in between me and the ceiling, I saw that the original subflooring was covered by newspapers from Newark in 1935.
Wow.
And the front page of the newspaper said, so great, it says, "Women are making money selling petticoats."
And you got to do it with that voice,
yeah,
like the old sports writer voice or whatever.
Yeah. You hear about the women making disposable income. What'll be next?
Well, people don't realize that, and this is why these stories need to be told. People don't realize what Newark, all the layers, like if we look at the archaeology of like, old civilizations, like just in the 300 or 400 years of Newark, if we look at that archaeology, like, they were the epicenter of competitive cycling.
Yeah.
They were the epicenter of the cider in the 1800s. The trees here had like the most amazing cider, and everyone had it. Beer is a trend here, but like jazz, right? And just all this stuff is like someone just needs to be constantly saying this, I guess.
No, the city has a great history, and I like interacting with it in those ways. Like, I mean, my neighborhood used to be Little Italy, right? So it's like, we have like St. Lucy's and like Basilica of the Sacred Heart in my neighborhood. And it's funny when I do a show up Bloomfield Avenue, and especially the further up Bloomfield Avenue I go, like if it's like Caldwell or somewhere like that, when I tell someone, like if I tell someone that's like 60 years old where I used to live, it's hilarious because they literally grew up in one of the houses like next to me, and they start telling, like, it's like they're always like 1952, you should have seen it.
It was beautiful.
Yeah. It's always these amazing like Bronx Tale stories, and like I actually like I really like that stuff. But and that's also the cool thing about even my home, right? You see certain things were built as like, okay, during maybe the Italian tenement era, this was made into a two-family at some point. But then the woman that I bought my house from was Puerto Rican, came in like the 70s and was there for 40 years.
Wow.
Right? And like definitely reflects like the change in that neighborhood. There's one Italian guy left on my block that's been there since like the early 70s. Yeah.
And the houses are like as strong as any other houses. They just are pretty good shape.
Yeah. I mean, if they're like taken care of and things like that, I mean, like obviously, Newark, we have the thing with like, it's the problem. I'd say like 30% of Newark's problems, maybe 40, is actually when houses go vacant for like any amount of time, right? Yep. It's just like vacant housing.
Yeah.
It's like that causes so many issues,
It really does.
Yeah.
It's like going on vacation, or a house even being vacant when like the owners leave, and just when like little bugs come in and ants and everything, and that's just in like a couple of months. But if it's vacant for a long time, those are happening writ large.
Oh yeah, and you see like so house shopping in Newark is a fun experience because you go to places that you like, but if it's been vacant at any point, like it's amazing how people will remove things. You're like, they got everything out of the house, like.
We're going to show you over here. No, I want to see there. It's like, no, how about we look over here?
No, you just walk in and you go, okay, pipe's gone. All pipe's gone. I went to one house, someone had removed, they had beautiful stained glass. Someone had removed the individual panes of stained glass from like a divider door to the kitchen.
That's so funny.
And then like my real estate broker was telling me all these stories from like the 80s and the 90s. She's like, oh, you should have seen it then. Like, she goes back in the 80s and 90s. One time we put a pit bull in the house in order to, to protect it when it's vacant. We came back. They took the pipes and the pit bull.
Oh my gosh! So I'm going to ask you, as Cory Booker, to say how this podcast went after you tell us what you would like to promote over the coming couple of weeks. To give you the chance to think about Cory Booker.
Oh yeah, well no, if you want to see anything I'm doing, go to my website, justinwilliamscomedy.com. all my dates are listed on there. All my projects are there. And if you send me an email, I'll come to your house.
Awesome. And how does Cory Booker think that this podcast went?
Cory Booker would like to say that this has been a very positive podcast. It's great to talk about some of the positive stories happening in the city of Newark, New Jersey. You know, I met a young man at a podcast on 550 Broad Street. You know, he's a great guy. And he thought his name was T-Bone.
You know,
yeah, I love it. I love it. Everything, and then everything's like, as the great Mahatma Manana once said. And it's like, oh boy, okay. Well, Justin, thanks so much for coming on. This was a phenomenal podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Oh, God bless you.